Good day, Bermuda. Thank you for joining us today. Our government remains resolute in its commitment to education reform, a priority we have championed since the election in 2017. We are unwavering in our resolve to ensure that public education is both modern and accountable, preparing Bermuda's children for success in an ever-evolving world. Today, as we reflect upon our journey, I want to underscore that our commitment to building a world-class 21st century public education system remains as strong as it was when we embarked on this path in 2017. The Ministry of Education has dedicated the past 4 years to laying a foundation to comprehensive education reform. Since 2020, we have taken several transformative steps, including the opening of 2 parish schools, which now serve students in Year 1 through Year 8, and the launch of signature learning programs at both Cedar Bridge Academy and the Barclay Institute. These programs are tailored to provide our students with a more personalized and engaging learning experience that aligns with their interests and their strengths. We have also introduced school transformation teams to support these initiatives and foster a collaborative approach to change. While these accomplishments deserve recognition, we must also address the challenges we have encountered. The road has not been without obstacles. Some long-standing practices and customs have slowed our pace, and recent events have underscored the complexity of change. By way of example, the issues most recently raised about some of the courses that are part of the signature learning programs at Cedar Bridge Academy highlight the challenges we face as we transform our system. We are working on issues around recruitment and scheduling and are committed to putting the resources and necessary changes in place to address them. As we continue this journey, we are committed to tackling these issues directly and with transparency, learning from our missteps, and making the adjustments necessary to build a system fit for our present and future learners. While today's focus is on our future reform agenda, I believe it is essential to revisit the purpose and milestones of our education reform journey. In response to the public's call for an alternative to the middle school model, we embarked on a transformative path to phase out middle schools and implement a 2-tier system that includes parish schools and senior schools. This new structure will see parish schools comprising of years 1 through 8, while senior schools will serve students in years 9 through 13. What was once middle school years M1 and M2 will transition to years 7 and 8 within parish schools, and M3 will become year 9 in senior schools. In parish schools, years 6, 7, and 8 are structured to provide enhanced curriculum learning experiences, distinct from the current middle school model, focusing on preparing students for a smooth and purposeful transition to our senior schools. Once they reach senior school, students can access signature learning programs as announced in May 2021. These programs will comprise of around 30% of a student's time alongside core curriculum subjects such as English, math, social studies, and science. Signature learning programs are designed to cultivate essential skills for the 21st century, including critical thinking and problem solving, creativity and communication, and collaboration and teamwork. I want to take a moment to acknowledge the tremendous work done by our school transformation teams and the curricular writing teams, working under the guidance of the Education Reform Unit with significant input from the Department of Education. Their dedication to advancing our reform agenda has been unwavering even in the face of substantial challenges. This journey has not been without its hurdles, yet their commitment to our vision for Bermuda students has propelled us forward. Education reform for 2025 and 2027. Today, I am pleased to share our education reform plan for the next phase spanning 2025 to 2027. This plan outlines the continued transformation of Bermuda's public school system, emphasizing our commitment to a structured, phased approach that builds on the groundwork laid thus far. The steps include opening 2 additional parish schools at Harrington Sound Primary and Elliott Primary School sites, which will feature Year 7 students. Advancing the phasing out of middle schools. Establishing a 3rd senior school at the Sands Secondary Middle School site, which will host signature learning programs in hospitality and tourism, along with education services. Recruiting school transformation teams for the Somerset and St. George's Parish Schools. Accelerating the development of the school for exceptionalities. With each step, we learn from our previous transitions and address any challenges in a phased manner to ensure smoother implementation. Primary schools. In September 2025, all primary schools will accept their usual P1 intake, except for St. George's Prep and Somerset Primary, which will not enroll new P1 students. This phased approach is intended to support the establishment of parish schools in Somerset and St. George's. Recruitment for school transformation teams for these parish schools will begin shortly. Work between the DOE and the ERU to facilitate these transitions, offering guidance and support to families planning future placements, will start after the school registration period concludes in the coming weeks. Parish schools. In September 2025, the parish school in Smiths and Devonshire will open at the Harrington Sound and Elliott Primary School site, respectively, with Year 7 classes. These parish schools are shaped by blueprint statements developed by their school transformation teams, including teachers, parents, and community members, that define key features of parish schools. Community engagement events will allow the public to learn more about these plans. Additionally, the previously announced closures of Prospect Primary and Gilbert Institute at the end of the 2025 academic year are being mapped out, with discussions set to commence shortly to ensure smooth transition of all affected. In 2026, a St. George's Parish School will open at the East End Primary site with the addition of Year 7, creating a central learning hub for parish students. This addition reinforces our commitment to providing equitable access to quality primary education across Bermuda. Middle schools. In September 2025, Sands Secondary Middle School will transition into our 3rd senior school, featuring signature learning programs in hospitality and tourism, along with educational services. Sands will continue to admit M1 students for the time being, and comprehensive support will be provided for students and families to help them navigate this transition. Whitney Institute and Delwood Middle will continue to admit M1 students until further notice. Senior schools. September 2025 will mark the transition date for our senior schools to their 5-year programs. The Year 8 students from Warwick and Hamilton Parish Schools and M2 students from our middle schools will begin the 5-year program. At the same time, the final group of M3 students will enter senior school under the current 4-year model, marking the last intake for this program. All Year 8s, M2s, and M3s have participated in SLP taster programs, which culminate in immersion days with industry partners and an open house at each of the 3 senior schools. Additionally, meetings have commenced with parents and school counselors to assist families in making informed senior school decisions. As announced in the recent mid-year budget review, school uniform vouchers will be available for all eligible students as part of our commitment to help easing transitions. Based on the Future World of Work research, the original 10 signature learning programs announced in May 2021 continue to guide our offerings by focusing on STEM, climate, environment, and resources, health and social care, community and social investment, arts and culture, education services, leisure, sports and leisure management, financial and insurance services, hospitality and tourism, and trades and professions. In response to ongoing reevaluation, the arts and culture program will join the STEM program at Cedar Bridge to create a STEAM pathway. Sports and leisure management will also be introduced as a strand within the health and social care signature program at the Barclay Institute. All senior schools will continue to participate in Bermuda College's dual enrollment options, the current dual enrollment options, providing students with valuable pathways to college credit and advanced learning opportunities. Our reform agenda remains dedicated to equipping students with skills and future-focused careers, and advanced educational pursuits, comprehensively preparing them for the years ahead. School transformation teams. As we look to the future, I am pleased to announce the school transformation teams for Somerset and St. George's Parish Schools will soon begin recruiting to develop transition plans specific to these communities. We are also moving up the timeline for setting up the Signature School for Exceptionalities School Transformation Team, initially scheduled for late 2025. This change will better support our students' needs as demand grows at Dame Marjorie Bean Hope Academy. To support this, we are moving forward with the work needed to develop and transform the Prospect Primary site to provide specialized support and dedicated facilities. This expansion reinforces our commitment to inclusive, equitable education across Bermuda. Renovation schedules will be shared as the project progresses, keeping families updated on timelines and positive impact on specialized educational resources. We ask parents, educators, community partners, and other stakeholders to look for recruitment notices. You are encouraged to sign up to be part of the school transformation teams so your voice can be part of the planning for your parish school. Our legislative efforts are also advancing. The Education Authority's draft legislation is anticipated to be completed in late November with a tabling in the House of Assembly planned for December. This legislation will be key to building an accountable, future-focused education system. In recent years, we have concentrated primarily on classroom learning improvements and transitioning to the parish and senior school models with signature learning programs. Our next phase is involve ensuring that our physical school environments align with this transformative work. In collaboration with the Ministry of Public Works, we are reviewing the insights from recent renovations at Purvis and Francis Patton to guide our approach to future school infrastructure development. We will share additional updates as these discussions progress. In conclusion, since our initial discussions on the 3-to-2-tier plan in April 2023, we've remained committed to a phased and deliberate approach, ensuring that each stage of reform is fully considered and attainable. Today's update covers the next 2 years as we continue on a path of steady progress, building confidence among families and communities in our schools' readiness and the measures in place to ensure smooth transitions. Our guiding philosophy is firmly rooted in a Bermuda-led process, by Bermudians, for Bermudians. This means that our approach to education reflects Bermuda's values, culture, and community aspirations. At the same time, we recognize that education must prepare our children for a globally interconnected world. By combining local leadership with international perspectives and drawing upon international experts for guidance on best practices and innovative approaches, we can ensure that our students are rooted in their heritage while being prepared for success on a global stage. These two principles, local ownership and global readiness, work together to create a truly comprehensive educational experience. This international perspective helps us build a culturally responsive education system that prepares our students to think critically, act responsibly, and engage meaningfully on a global stage. We invite everyone interested in Bermuda's educational future to step forward and join us, whether through school transformation teams or as active voices in our communities. There is room for all who wish to contribute. This is a shared responsibility, and we firmly believe that education is the business of every Bermudian. As we move forward, our commitment is clear: to listen actively, engage deeply with our community, and adapt as needed. Together, we will continue to overcome challenges, celebrate our achievements, and ensure every child in Bermuda receives a quality education. Reforming our education system for our children is not just a goal, it is our collective duty. Thank you.
And thank you, Minister. We'll take our first set of questions from Sarah Lagan, Royal Gazette.
Thank you, Minister. You had mentioned the acceleration of the School for Exceptionalities. Can you talk any more on that, why it's being accelerated and when it's being accelerated to?
Okay, as I mentioned in the statement, it was one of those things that we were going to be onboarding the school transformation teams in late 2025, but we've decided to accelerate that due to what I could term as developments at DAME, our school for exceptionalities now, and the need to recognizing the need that there needs to be an expansion of the space that we use for those students, and so we're looking to expand to accelerate that program and bring it online earlier than was originally anticipated.
Do you have any timeline, roundabout timeline for how soon?
Typically, the school transfer, this is an interesting one because this is one of those schools that is not just the education and the ERU. This is going to have to involve input from health, input from DCFS, and different other government entities as we look to move that forward. So it's anticipated for us that we're looking at things, we are starting to look at things now that we might be in a position to do some things with the school in September of next year, but the school will not be ready fully for at least another year after that, I would say.
Okay, so it's mostly a space issue, but is it also a staffing issue with that?
It's a resource issue. We need to provide the resources for our staff and our students as those resources requests arise.
Yeah. Have the current challenges at Hope Academy been addressed yet in terms of the staffing and the safety concerns that were reported on recently?
We are working with the staff and working with the principal at that school to provide the necessary resources that they need.
Okay. So work in progress.
It's one thing that I've learned about education, it is a work in progress. It never ends. It is something that continuously evolves as we move along. So a decision that we make today and a resource we put in place today might be surplus or not enough tomorrow. And so we address it as those issues arise.
Okay, but obviously there was some unrest, that there certainly wasn't enough resources in place to the point that the doors closed recently. So it's addressed beyond the fact that, beyond the point that the doors aren't going to close again next week.
Okay.
Would you agree?
I said, as the resources are requested, the resources are supplied to our schools.
The Cedar Bridge hiring, is there anything more you can say about that? You've mentioned briefly about the challenges with recruitment at Cedar Bridge.
To be perfectly honest and transparent, we have done an audit of Cedar Bridge, and I think it's important for us to ensure that under the signature learning programs, there are courses that are taught or classes that are taught. And once we did an audit of that, we recognized that the one course that was being taught, engineering, hasn't had an adequate engineering teacher since the inception of the program. All of the other courses actually have had adequate teachers. We are in the process of recruiting. It's something that has been noted and I mentioned about some of the long-standing practices and the different things that have been done in the past. We are recruiting for that position. I happen to know that 3 persons have applied for that position and they're being interviewed tomorrow, but we do now have a qualified BEC teacher that has come on board that will be in place to teach that particular course moving forward until we finish the recruitment process.
You said BEC?
Bermuda Educator Council. All
Council,
teachers within the system have to have a teacher license, and that is the group that licenses teachers.
Sure. And then when I sat down with yourself and Kenneth Caesar at Cedar Bridge, you had mentioned that there was going to be a review of the recruitment practices given the challenges currently. Is there any update you can give on that review?
There is no update from my standpoint because that isn't, when I mentioned that is an update that's being done by the government in whole, and so that was something that would not necessarily be handled through the Ministry of Education. It's through the DEOD that would be handling that, but I do know that we're looking at the Department of Employee and DEOD.
And the DOE as well.
The DEOD handles recruitment for the government, but they work in tandem with the various departments. And so, of course, the DOE would be involved in the recruitment, but things would be handled through DEOD.
Do you know, I mean, I know that you'd asked advice because you knew it was going to be raised at the interview about the recruitment process, whether any discussions are being held about the possibility of going down the route as the aided schools do, where the government is less involved in the actual hiring. Has any of those discussions been had, as is the case at Berkeley?
with our schools, nothing is off the table in order to do a recruitment process to get qualified teachers in front of the classroom. So I cannot say that is something that will happen, but I certainly will not say that's something that won't be considered.
Sure, okay. And the contract with Innovation Unit Australia, New Zealand, has that been renewed now?
That is in the process of going through the necessary steps to reach cabinet so we can have a discussion around that.
Okay, so that's not been renewed yet?
No.
Okay. I had some questions out recently about Purvis, that there had been some students that had left. Is there any update you can give us on that? Or would you prefer me to go through DCI for those figures? I think it was the end of October, those figures were going to be available to the government.
Yes, and Sarah, as we had discussed, at the end of October is what they call the status day, or I can't remember the exact name of it. It's the day they say this is the day we take we take the enrollment data. That'll be it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the enrollment data date. And so that stuff still needs to be compiled and put together. And as you know, we did promise that we would sit down and discuss that very specifically once that official data has been given out.
Okay, sure. Okay, and then in terms of the opening of the next parish primary schools, are there any lessons learned? Because there were some delays with the opening of Francis Patton and Purvis because of the construction, that sort of thing. I'm sure you would like to avoid those delays with the opening of the next parish primaries. Is that something you're confident you're going to be able to do?
And as I mentioned in the statement, there's been discussion and lessons learned. And so there's discussions going on between the Ministry of Education and Public Works on what is the better way to approach that and approach those types of developments. And more information of that will be coming out as we announce what that's going to look like. And so I don't want to preempt the conversations that they're having, but there's definitely lessons learned from that. And a different approach is going to be taken into the development of not just these schools, but schools in the future.
Okay, that's good. And then I don't know if you wanted to address this now, but the BUT put out the statement yesterday addressing multiple concerns from lack of substitute teachers to mould and safety and intimidation, even breach of confidence. Are there any of those that you might be able to address in today's press conference?
Sure. Like many in the community, I was disappointed in the statement that was put out. I know that we will continue to reach out and work with our union partners because it takes all of us to be working together in tandem to move together something as critical as education reform. I do want to say one of the things that was mentioned in there was that last week when we made a statement, we put the name of the principal and the BUT rep that they were talking to. That's something I do take personally. I take personally and apologize, and I made that known with a meeting I had with the BUT earlier this week. It was something that, in hindsight, although from our perspective, we thought of it as innocent of really just stating what was factually happening. But in hindsight, it was something that we should have moved away from.
Sure. Okay, last question. Very briefly mentioned Whitney Institute there. Is there anything you can share in terms of changed plans or what's going on there? Is it still looking to close? Is there anything you can add?
Yes, Whitney is the schools that have been designated as not remaining in the system still remain. We had as you know, we had a comprehensive relook at the parish primary decision paper, and we've come out with the schools. Those schools are the ones that will remain. Everything else is remaining the same. The only variable that we have here is when schools will phase out. And so this is why we've taken a different approach that we took in April now to say this is what we know will happen in the next 2 years versus this is what we know will happen and this is what we want to happen further on down the line. So we're not forced to come back and then learn from our previous, learn from what we've accomplished to say some things might change. And so with Whitney, as I stated in the statement, all middle schools will be accepting M1 students in September 2025 until further notice.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Jasmine Patterson from Bermuda Broadcasting.
Thanks, Tina. Thank you, Minister. Just to start, I had a few questions with regards to opening of the SANS middle school into a senior school. I guess, will that school be renamed at all?
The renaming of schools is something that we leave up to the actual school community. And so if they do want to rename, I can even say at some of our primary schools that will become parish schools, there's been talk about how a renaming process will take place. We want to have a process in place that involves the whole community, and we're kind of leaving it up to the schools to sort of lead that out, because then they'll come to us. So I think it's because it says, say, on secondary middle school, so, it does have secondary and middle in there.
Yes. You could take the middle out, I suppose.
And go
if
back
they
to
want
say on secondary school.
Okay, and just getting down to the logistics of the actual signature learning programs that are being offered. So SANS will have hospitality, tourism, and education services. So for example, if there are students currently at Berkeley or Cedarbridge that are interested in those subjects, will they be allowed to transfer? Or I guess overall, how will you balance the number of students amongst those three senior schools?
That is a very interesting question, and one that vexes us quite a bit. So the idea is that all schools, what we call the encore subjects, are identical across the board. And so what you're looking at, and what we want to educate our public, and we recognize it's going to take some time to get used to that concept, is whatever your child is interested in, that would be the school to go, because they will get exposure to those particular subjects. And so what we're looking at, and we've always stated that at some point in the future, as we go down this transformation track, the opportunity to do a major at one school and a minor at another school is something that we still harbor hopes to actually do. We also have already answered the question quite a few times, course, not the encore and core, yes. And so what we've also spoken to in the past is the ability for a student to say, well, maybe I'm not really feeling education. Do I want to move to trades, or do I want to move to STEM? And that will actually be predicated on how far along they are in the particular program. And so those are the types of conversations we have to get. So hopefully within the first year or 2 year, they would be comfortable, or say, I might want to try something else. And there are still opportunities for them to still get good opportunities out of these particular programs. Remember, they represent 30% of their learning work. And so, for example, if you go to STEM and you spend 2 years doing introduction to engineering, introduction to textiles or something along those lines, then you want to move to hospitality, you would have missed the intro up there to hospitality features. And so there might be a drop off in what you get, but you will still be able to get the credits to graduate, because something will be discussed and worked out between you, child, and guardians and parents.
Sure. Now, currently under the parish primary system, students attend whatever school is in their parish. Obviously, that changes to senior school. Does your team flag, issues of people living in the East End having to go all the way to SANS to do these courses, hospitality and tourism?
Quick correction there. Students are able to go to schools within their zone. There is East, Central, and West zone. So just because you live in Warwick, you may go into a school you may go to the Southampton Parish School, for whatever reason. And but that is something interesting that we did talk about, and that has to do with transportation. In years past, when I was in school, if you lived in St. George's and you were going SANS, there was a method to get you there. So once the registration process is done, that information is taken to look to modify the bus schedules if they do need to be modified.
Okay. You also mentioned in your statement the formation of the Education Authority legislation that's due to be tabled this month. How do you see this fitting into, the organization as you're currently transitioning at the moment?
The desire to bring in an education authority is to introduce another level of accountability. At some point, the Education Authority will operate all of education. It's not something that will happen immediately because the authority needs to be brought into formation, which is essentially a triangle that operates at arm's length from government, and get up to running, and then we'll talk about what we call the different phases of how we move the schools into that operation.
Do you have would this take a year, 2 years before it's up and running?
Well, let's just say we need to get the legislation up and running first.
Okay. Do you foresee any pushback on that legislation?
The legislation is, it's something that we've been working on literally for like the last almost 3 years. And so we finally, we've gotten to the point where we said, this is what we want the legislation to say. I don't know if you understand the process of getting it drafted. We pass it on to chambers, they come back with their legal opinions. And so we're just in that process. And once it is drafted, as I said, it'll be done in phases. And the first phase is to spin up the actual authority itself, which would just be the core group of the people that would be operating that, with further phases of how schools would transition in, how the Department of Education would be consumed into that, and those sorts of things. So that is, it won't happen in the next academic year, that's for sure.
And will the overseas consultancy firm tasked with helping the ERU, were they part of those discussions?
They do have, within the ERU, there are 17 work groups. And so within one of those work groups is the Education Authority working group. And so they do have a representative on that work group. But the work group is primarily made up out of Meridians.
Okay. So just looking onto, I guess just touching onto the union issues. So recruitment and teaching numbers have been a recurring theme. Do we have, an ideal number of teachers that you'd like to have within the system? And what is that shortfall, if at all?
As I answered to Sarah, the actual number fluctuates per year. We may get a cohort that requires way more paras than we had the year before. We may get a cohort that requires less. There may be some other issues that need to be handled, like the issue that is going up at Cedar. Well, what we found in Cedar Bridge is the influx of students into the trades and professions program required them to get more teachers. Previously, they were okay. And so those things are done almost on a year-to-year basis. And so it's difficult to say we need 100 teachers, but next year we might need 90, the following year we might need 110. So it's difficult to say that. But what I do is I do want to take this opportunity to say thank you to the hardworking education professionals that we do have at our schools that actually rise to the challenges, because sometimes these challenges just arise almost, when you walk in the morning, something's different. And so, but they do a yeoman's work of making sure that our children have adequate supervision and teaching within the classroom.
Just based off the letter that was written by the union, clearly not all is well in terms of relations between the ministry, the department, and the union. Obviously, a lot more changes that have been announced. How do you intend to mend these relationships, or at least get to a point where the vitriol is not being put out there in the public's face?
Everything starts with a conversation, and it's just sitting down and talking and articulating, what is wrong and what we can do to fix it.
Is that happening now?
Yes. At Cedar Bridge, one of the things that came out of the original unrest is that the school leadership and the board meet with the DUT representatives on a bi-weekly basis to discuss issues.
Would you consider introducing another mediator to assist in the disputes?
I would say nothing ever comes off the table as long as it leads to resolution.
Okay. I believe I just have one more. Yes. So when it comes to recruitment, is there an issue of funding at all?
Absolutely not.
Okay, thanks for your time.
All right. Members of the media, thank you for joining us. Minister, thank you. We will post an FAQ. It was posted on gov.bm. For those that are watching, you can go to gov.bm or MOED, the Ministry of Education website, MOED.bm, to see the FAQ and also the minister's statement. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you.